Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our module on supporting English language learners. Your presentation today is being presented to you by Solved Consulting. This course is being recorded, so just so that you know that we are engaging in a recorded class that will be shared later. Solved is a CTLE provider, so you will get CTLE credits for attending this course. At the end, I will share with you how you could register for more credits if you are interested. So welcome. Thank you for spending an hour of your afternoon with us. And let's jump in and get started. My name is Maura Musso. I am a professor of early childhood and childhood education at SUNY New Paltz. I'm also a New York State certified elementary teacher and certified literacy specialist. I have experience teaching students from pre-K through adult learners. And I am excited to be with you and spending an hour with you this afternoon. If you could just take a moment and jump in the chat and just type your name and the grade or subject area, content area in which you teach. So we can see who's out there with us today, and welcome everyone. And welcome to those of you who are jumping in the chat already. Adult Ed, K5, ELLs, awesome. Teacher coordinator, welcome. It's great to have everybody here. 3-5. Physical ed and health, awesome. Great. Well, welcome to everybody. I'm very happy to have you here. And it'll be great to share all these different backgrounds, different experiences as we work through our course together today. So just some norms for our session. My big one for you, my promise to you, is this one down here to start and end on time. We jumped right in at 2:30. And my goal is to close up around 3:25 because I have a little feedback form for you to complete, and I want to give you some time within our course to do that. Also, I'm going to ask on that feedback form at the end, if you can put a personal email address there. Some new snafus, technological snafus with your school emails are blocking us in sending you your CTLE credits. So when we get to that feedback form at the end, if you could just put in a personal email for your CTLE credits to be sent to, that way you will be able to get them in a more timely fashion. So today's module is going to focus on equitable assessment practices for our English language learners and our multilingual learners. This module is in a series of modules on supporting English language learners. Courses A, B, and C have been offered already this fall, and courses E and F are coming up in the coming weeks. Courses A, B, C will be re-offered again later. So if you're interested in taking some more courses on supporting English language learners, those will be available to you. So for our agenda today, we're going to be looking at two essential questions. First one, how can we design equitable assessment practices for our multilingual learners? And what are some tools we can use to support our MLs? And with these, we're going to work through three objectives. First, to identify the challenges surrounding equitable and meaningful assessments of MLs. Second, apply responsive adaptations across learning environments. And third, identify digital tools for equitable assessments. We are going to be using a note catcher today. We're going to actually jump right in with that pretty quickly here. So if you can open this link that I just put in the chat for you. This will open our note catcher document, and a lot of what we're going to be doing today will be based off of different charts, different information that's presented to you here. So if you can open that in another window, that will be wonderful, and we'll be using that throughout. And if you can go right ahead and get that open, we're going to jump right into our first activity using this note catcher. So on your note catcher, you'll see for our first activity, we're going to take a look at what you're currently doing. And this is an independent activity just to kind of get you started thinking about your experiences, what you're doing in the classroom. So we'll just take about 2 or 3 minutes here. Open up your note catcher in column 1 under essential question 1. If you can just write down what your current strategies are for assessing your multilingual learners. And then in column 2, just jot down any possible equity considerations that you have for that. So we'll take about 2 minutes. Anybody who does not have it, just came in, I'm putting that link to our note catcher back in the chat for you. So those of you just coming in can do that. And again, this is just to get you kind of thinking about your own class, school situation, what you're doing. And if you, as you're typing those into the note catcher, if something particularly stands out to you that you would like to share with us, feel free to drop that into the chat as well. If you have any questions, just let me know. Have anything that you want to share, particularly of interest, of any current strategies you're using with your MLs, or any concerns you would like us to talk about those equity considerations, go right ahead and pop that into the chat and be happy to talk about those. I'll take about another minute for you to fill out your chart in your note catcher. And for those of you just joining us, I am popping a link to a note catcher in the chat for you. Take about another 30 seconds to just finish writing down anything that's popping into your mind about your current situation, your current classroom and students, what you're doing for assessment, and what your concerns might be. Right, and then if you wanted to keep doing that as we move on, you go right ahead. We'll continue here talking about assessment a little bit. So the word assess comes from a Latin verb that means to sit with. And basically, this is what we are doing when we're assessing our learners. In an assessment, one sits with the learner. This implies it is something we do with our students and for our students and not to our students. And this is, maybe different than our students perceive assessment. And so it's something that we need to help them to understand as well. I want you to just think for a minute. And again, if you want to jump into the chat and share any of this, who receives high expectation messages in your school? Does your school have high expectation messages? And if so, what students are they going to? Do all students hear that they are capable of more? Do they all believe that they're capable of more? Do the students in your school, in your classes, see challenges as being opportunities? Does your school help all kids to engage and to achieve at high levels? And these are some things that we should be thinking about within our school and within our own classrooms. Are we helping our students to see assessment these ways? Are we giving them the feedback that they can achieve more, that they can achieve at high levels? Where is the blockage with our students? So those are some things I'd like you to keep in mind as we continue going forward. All right, for our next activity, this is also in your note catcher. This is if you scroll down to activity number 2. Catcher open in another window as you watch this video. And as we go through this video, take a look at what you notice and what you wonder about what is being presented. And I'll just drop that note catcher back in the chat before we begin for anybody who's just popping in. Okay, so if you have that opened in another window next to this, and just give me a thumbs up in the chat if you can hear
We've
this
been
sound
talking
okay.
about drawing conclusions. Now, showing me with a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Thank you, Peggy.
Is drawing conclusions the same kind of drawing as when I draw a picture? Thumbs up if it's the same kind, thumbs down if it's different.
At Claremont Immersion School in Arlington, Virginia, assessment is happening all the time. Samantha Kirch teaches 3rd grade at Claremont. In this moment, she's checking her students' understanding of the concept of drawing a conclusion.
It's like proving your answer in the text.
Because of their large population of English language learners, the Claremont staff has to be very thoughtful about their assessments.
When we think particularly of our English language learners, we want to make sure that we are mindful of the language that they have, and where do we need to provide support so that they're able to express what they know. What are the language components that they need to learn to demonstrate that they understand those concepts?
I conclude that this person is at the beach because it said that his toes were in the hot sand.
For example, Ms. Kirch wants to make sure her ELLs understand that the use of the word drawing in the phrase drawing a conclusion is different from drawing a picture.
So Hector took what he already knew. He knows that sand and waves are at the beach, and what he read in the text, and he put it together to draw his conclusion.
She's addressing the subject today because during formal quarterly assessments, many students in her class struggled with the concept. The quarterly assessments are part of Claremont's ongoing effort to keep every student on track.
We use a tight assessment loop to really show whether our students are learning the content that we need. We pre-assess our students. They show us what they have learned or what they haven't learned. Then we teach them, and then we give a post-assessment. We analyze that to see if at the post-assessment, if they haven't learned it, then we go back and reteach. And we see that as just a constant loop that we are looking at what students are able to do, planning for that instruction, assessing again to see if they have mastered it, moving on to plan for that instruction, and we continue that loop together.
Earlier, Ms. Kirch reviewed the quarterly assessments with Kim Klaus, the reading specialist, and Sheila Majdi, the ESOL teacher.
One of the areas they struggled with was 3.6E, drawing conclusions. And it looks like on one of the questions, only about 50% of the students got it correct.
And I would anticipate that just looking at the question itself, it may have to do with one of the words, recipe, just or suggests 2 of the vocabulary words in the question.
I think drawing conclusions is a really difficult concept because the answer is not explicitly in the text. It has to come from them thinking more deeply about the passage or about the story. But especially for English language learners, I think that not having as much background knowledge possibly, or dealing with different vocabulary than they're used to, that can all affect their comprehension, which then can affect their ability to draw a conclusion.
The team comes up with a plan for improving their students' facility with drawing conclusions, involving teaching the concept again, but in a different way this time. Ms. Kirch starts with the whole class and then has the students who struggled the most with drawing conclusions join her for a small group lesson.
The speaker can best be described as.
Good. So Brandon, do I try to answer right away or do I go back in the text?
Go back to the text.
Go back to the text. So I'm going to lines 17 to 20, just like what the question said. David, what do you think?
I think upset because he or she is upset that they can't find their shoe.
At the end of the lesson, Ms. Kirch has the children complete 2 questions on their own, back at their desks. This is known as an exit slip, another informal assessment. When they bring their answers back to her, she'll be able to tell if they now have a better understanding of drawing conclusions or if they need more help.
Thank you. Did you prove your answer in the text? Yeah. Okay. I'll check over them and see how you did. Great work.
Some of the English language learners struggling with drawing conclusions are getting another dose of help from Ms. Majdi. They're working on drawing conclusions about characters.
Who's actually talking? Is the watermelon talking here?
No.
Melissa, what do you think? Who's talking?
I think Spider's talking inside of the watermelon, convincing Possum to believe that the watermelon is talking.
Oh my goodness.
It's all part of Claremont's assessment
Is the
loop.
watermelon actually
Pre-assess,
No.
teach,
Spider,
post-assess,
I think, is hiding.
reteach,
Why
so
can't you
that
get
each
out?
child has the chance to master
Too far.
grade-level
Why?
material.
Doing all of this assessment, I know, can seem really daunting. It takes a lot of time, and sometimes it feels like instead of assessing for these skills, I should be teaching them. But I think when you picture assessment in a different way, as not just a test at the end of a unit, but all of those little things that you can put in throughout the day, it's really worth it because then you know where the students are and where they need to go.
This video production was made possible by the National Education Association.
You just finish up writing in your note catcher what you're noticing and wondering. We're going to go on to the next activity, and that's going to be a breakout room activity. So you're going to have some time to discuss what you just wrote down from activity 2 as you're working on activity 3. We'll double dip here a little bit. Okay. So we're going to move down to the next activity in your note catcher. And for this one, I'm going to send you out to a breakout room. When you get into your breakout room, I want you collectively as a group to select one of these UDL guidelines, either A or B. Read the description and follow the links to its 3 checkpoints in order to discuss how to provide equitable assessment. I'd like you to consider within your group and discuss instructional implications of what you might implement. And then in the table on your note catcher for activity 3, record any changes in pedagogy, mindset, and resources using the sentence frame, I used to, what you previously did, but any changes you'll make, but now I will, and what changes you'll make. So let me just put this link to the note catcher again for anyone who's recently joined us in the chat for you. And I'm going to just put you into breakout rooms, and we'll go out for about 10 minutes. You will be getting an invitation to join a room coming up on your screen. If you need help moving yourself to that room, go right ahead. And we'll be out for about 10 minutes. We'll come back about 3 o'clock to main room. And I will put an announcement in about a minute before we return to the main room. Okay, so go ahead now and bring your note catcher with you and join your room. And let me know if you need any help. Right. Welcome back to those of you who are just returning from our breakout rooms. I hope you had a good conversation with your colleagues. We're going to continue on now with assessment and look at designing assessments. So as you may have seen in some of your reading, to make assessments more equitable, some things we could be doing in our classrooms are to personalize our feedback to our students, to eliminate timed assessments, provide choices to demonstrate understanding, what fit each student's learning style, vary the type of questions and formatting of questions that we ask, and most importantly, using mistakes as opportunity for learning. Some examples of equity practices from the course Dismantling Racism in Mathematics. Teach thoughtful, complex concepts with rich texts and tasks and interdisciplinary connections. Again, with using mistakes as opportunities for learning, recognize mistakes as being miscommunicated or incomplete knowledge, and share that with the students. That sometimes the mistake that they perceive that they made can be translated back to us, a mistake in which we did not ask them the right questions. And so take some of that onus off of them. Some more examples: allow engagement in productive struggle, and note monitoring and support for feedback. And make rigor accessible through strong and thoughtful scaffolding. We always want to scaffold for our students. So now we'll move on to activity 4 in your note catcher. So if you open that document back up again, and we're going to look at this video on assessment of English language learners. And we're going to look at it in chunks. So I will play a chunk of it and then give you time to record in your note catcher the different columns. Okay, so we're going to start with this first video, looking at what challenges our English language learners and multilingual learners face when asked to demonstrate what they know and can do. Let's take a look.
Problems with inappropriate assessments, there's at least 3 problems. One of them is a heavy language load. Another one is that the test item is presented out of context. And the third one is that the test item might have a cultural base. And so if we talk about heavy language load, a heavy language load is where the wording of a test item or directions to take the test presents an obstacle in and of itself to the student responding to the item and giving you the information that you're actually looking for. And so if I can't get past the directions or the wording of the item to give you the answer, that's going to pose a problem. That's what I'm calling heavy language load. The second problem is that the items tend to be decontextualized on a standardized or multiple choice test, where you have these items separate from any meaningful reading passage or meaningful personal experience. And these items in and of themselves may, out of context, provide a challenge, a stop to the student who goes, out of context, this doesn't really make a lot of sense. That's what I mean by meaningful. It's got to be in some kind of context. Finally, the cultural base itself. A lot of cultural assumptions are made on the background knowledge of the learner, and depending on whether it's a teacher-made test or even a standardized test, these assumptions may be incorrect. And if the student has to get past these assumptions to answer the item in reading, then, and if he's not able to do so successfully, then the item itself will not serve the purpose for which it was intended.
To take a moment to just jot down some of that information onto your table in your note catcher. And next, we're going to continue this video looking at what kinds of assessments and documentation teachers can use.
Thinking about assessing in the child?
Well, when we talk about classroom-based assessment, there's two kinds. The first kind is the teacher useful assessment, and the second kind is the student-friendly assessment. So the teacher assessment can be observations of student behavior and performance, such as ability to read letters, recognize letters and sounds, sound symbol discrimination. The teachers can keep a checklist of reading skills. They can take anecdotal records. They can keep notes of when a student is making progress or having a particular problem. Documentation is such an important part of assessment because all of us have our days go by very quickly, and we can quickly forget specific diagnostic details of student progress and learning. So it's so important to keep records such as checklists, anecdotal records, scoring rubrics which detail expectations for reading performance on a criterion reference scale.
What about assessing kids with disabilities, English language learners with disabilities? What would you do different then?
English language learners with disabilities can be assessed using the same kinds of performance-based assessments, but perhaps with different kinds of materials or different levels of materials. I know that English language learners with disabilities can be assessed using manipulatives, using pictures, using illustrations, which we tend to use with beginning level English language learners in any case. So it's the same kind of approach, but possibly with different kinds of instructional material that they're used to using.
Again, just finish jotting down some of your thoughts there on that section. And as Dr. Valdez-Pierce was saying, we can look at one of these challenges in being the wording of the question. So in this problem that you see on your screen, the student is instructed to find X. So we know that they're looking for an algebraic equation finding a numeric value for X. The student, however, our English language learner, knew the meaning of the word find as different than the mathematical meaning. But the student found X on the page and even put a note on the page to help the teacher in locating the lost X. Circled the X and noted, here it is. The student understood the meaning of find in one context, but not in the appropriate mathematical sense. And so with this, as a teacher, you are not able to assess the problem, the mathematical problem, because of this language barrier. In this next section of our video, I'd like you to just note on your note catcher what you notice and wonder about what Dr. Valdez-Pierce is telling us.
Sound.
Even in kindergarten, an important ingredient of any reading program is assessment.
We don't want to start a program in September and wait till June to get a sense for whether or not we're successful. We want to start in September. We want to see how we're doing in the middle of September, at the end of the September, the beginning of November. Every month we want to have some sense of whether or not the investment we're making, the interventions we're using are effective for kids. We can't do that without progress monitoring systems.
Samuel, show me the front of the book.
Mr. Lee regularly measures each student's progress. Today, it's Samuel's turn.
Show me the title of the book. Good. I will show you letters. You tell me the name of the letter, okay? This one.
T.
T. Good.
G.
Good. How about this one? Right now, He's still very low in terms of reading, letter recognition. Listen, door, floor. Sound the same? Good. But he should come up. How about mix, shoes?
Hearing a rhyme requires phonemic awareness. These quick tests will tell Mr. Lee which skills each child needs to boost. Reading coaches will offer one-on-one help to the bottom fifth of students.
Can you write your first name, last name for Mr. Lee? Okay, right here. Most of my students, in fact, almost all of my students, at the beginning of the year, they don't know anything, and towards the end of the year, I have this feeling that I've done something good with them. You know, they just blossom. Good. Keep going. Even those who don't speak English. So I feel real good about that. Very good, Samuel.
KB Lee is leading his students on one of the most important journeys of their lives.
If you want to be on my train, you have to tell me a word that starts with the letter S.
Mr. Lee's last stop today is bringing together phonemic awareness and letter sound correspondences.
Socks. Good. Get on the train. Get on the train.
Almost all of Mr. Lee's kids are on track for becoming readers.
What sound? Well, help me.
Dr. Pierce, you're an expert in this. What did you see in that classroom that the rest of us might not have noticed?
Yeah, I saw the teacher engaging the student in a task. The task of doing something to follow specific instructions. And while the student was writing his name and performing certain literacy tasks, the teacher was keeping records. The teacher had already walked into the situation with a plan. He already had some kind of a checklist or some kind of anecdotal record sheet. He knew exactly what he was looking for, and he was keeping records on this individual child to be able to carefully diagnose his strengths and needs, and then therefore direct instruction based on that.
Now, I imagine we might see that in any number of classrooms. What techniques was he using that were appropriate to English language learners in this situation that we saw?
Well, he was relating to prior experience and prior knowledge. He was asking him, write your name. And he was using manipulatives, where he had the little flashcards up, manipulatives, any kind of hands-on experience. He had the learners engage in kinesthetic activities. There was quite an incentive to answer the question when he said, you can get on my train. So he had, kinesthetic activities. The learner felt that he was belonging if he was able to provide the correct answer. He had the students participate in writing down. There was a writing down task. He was tapping prior knowledge and making the learners feel that they could contribute something in the classroom.
Now, this particular classroom was really diverse, it looked like, and clearly he wasn't using the native language because there were kids of so many different language backgrounds. How do you assess and diagnose in a classroom like that?
Well, what you want to have is a common set of objectives or standards for teaching, and then compare each student's accomplishments toward the standards. Instead of comparing students to themselves, to each other in a class, you compare the student to his or her mastery of these objectives as specified in expectations for performance on a scoring guide or checklist or criteria sheet. So it doesn't matter if there's 100 different languages in the classroom. What matters is that the teacher is consistent in keeping records on how close or how far each student is from accomplishing the learning.
So just take a moment to close out that section of your note catcher. And if there's anything particular relevant that you would like to share, you can drop that into the chat as we continue to go forward. So in looking at some practices to promote equity for our multilingual learners, we can consider increasing participation and concept development by using home language strategies, increasing comprehensible input by recording lessons, increasing access to appropriate support services by conducting bilingual assessments, and increasing engagement by incorporating students' cultural assets through a survey or other means. Responsive adaptations to formative reading assessments make room for students' language practices through opportunity for translanguaging. To make learning stick, we have to determine what students already know. Then from there, we must construct culturally based connections between the existing schema, their prior knowledge, what they already know, and the new content. So this really means we have to get to know our students one-on-one, individually, and see where each student is right now, and then take them to their own next level. Here's an example of using responsive adaptations in an assessment. So for this, the text is read in English, and the running record includes miscues for language and pronunciation. And so again, we're looking at the students' miscues as being information to inform our assessment going forward. So recording those miscues for language and pronunciation, we have some more information to base our lessons on. The questions for the text in English are, the texts are both in English and in Spanish. So the comprehension can then be answered in either language. So we can then see how the student is comprehending what they have read. We can also look for personalized formative assessments. In personalized formative assessments, feedback and information during the instructional process is used during the instructional process while learning is taking place. We identify areas that may need improvements, but this assessment is not graded. It is used to gauge students' learning progress and to determine teaching effectiveness. So this is looking both at how's the student progressing in the learning and how are you, the teacher, progressing and being effective. And what different tools should we be implementing, or what different methods and activities should we be implementing to be more successful with our students? So let's take a look at some formative assessment tools. The first are CFUs.
Create various types of assessment from a write text response. So this would be where you would ask a formative assessment question and students would type in the answer. It can be a choose the number of some choices that you would give them. Choose the answer allows you to do multiple choice as well as true and false. You can actually, the show students a website is nice because you can actually pull up and insert things like an image or insert a URL from a video or a website and then ask a question about that.
Another type of formative assessment.
Create various types of assessment.
Formative assessment tool.
One of the easiest ways to get your students quickly interacting with your lesson is through the use of polling. At its core, a poll allows every student to come up with a response instead of only one or two getting the opportunity. There are many ways to conduct a poll and many reasons to do so. So we're going to provide you with 3 useful examples. Number 1, digital polling. Many free-to-use polling apps exist and only require the use of a computer and an electronic device. For this digital poll, let's ask a predictive question to get our students engaged in the lesson.
Yesterday, we found out that Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn took an oath to never tell what they witnessed. Do you think they'll be able to keep their promise? Take out your phones and join the poll. It looks like most of you think that both will keep their oath. Well, today we're going to find out.
Digital polling is a great way to use student phones for learning, but perhaps you don't have access to enough devices. If that's the case, there are other options like number 2, dry erase boards. These boards are very inexpensive, reusable, and many schools already have them available for your use. Let's use them to check to see how students are doing midway through the lesson.
I know you're all working hard, but I want to see how you're feeling about some of the questions. If you're sure you know the answer, draw a smiley face. If you're not sure, draw a thinking face. Okay, question 1. Great! All smiley faces. All right, how about question 2? All right, I see some thinking faces. No problem, that is a tough question. Let's work through it together.
Dry erase boards provide an easy method for the teacher to take a poll for immediate feedback. But perhaps you don't have dry erase boards readily available. If that's the issue, there's always number 3, voting with your feet. You don't need any materials for this poll, and it's very easy to do, even with little planning. In this example, we want to get our students thinking critically about the material.
Okay, let's take a quick class poll. Who do you believe was more responsible for the Trojan War? Paris or Menelaus? If you think Paris, go to this side of the room. If you think Menelaus, go to that side of the room. And go!
Getting students up and moving is an excellent way to get students re-engaged and thinking about your curriculum topic. Whichever of the 3 polling methods you use, they will all lead to active learning. So, start designing some polls and get all of your students involved in your lessons.
Final formative assessment tool is exit slips.
An exit ticket is a short assessment given at the end of class that the students must complete before they can leave class for the day. So on a scrap piece of paper, please put your name. Please write exit tickets. Exit tickets can be anything from a prepared 1 or 2 question little quiz that you've typed up or written, or it can be as simple as throwing a question up on the overhead and giving them scrap paper and having them solve it. They like the routine. They know exactly what to do. They know at the end of the day they're going to be held accountable. It's a really quick way for me to assess if students have learned the concept of the day. I often use it as the you do part of guided practice. So once the students have practiced together and we've done it together, then they are able to show me if they can do it on their own.
So those are some ideas of different formative assessment tools that you might be using or consider using within your classroom or school. So let's take a look back at our note catcher now for activity number 5. This is going to be an independent activity for you to, go through this. I'm going to go through this.
You have 3.
There we go. This is going to be an independent activity for you to do at some point on your own after our session. So you have this within your note catcher for you to kind of think about to where you're going to continue going with your practice. Right, so now, as I said earlier, I wanted to bring us to a wrap up at about 3:25 to give you some time to complete your feedback form. And so I'm going to put feedback form in the chat for you. And here it comes. And as I said earlier, please make sure on this form that you put your personal email address. We are having a hard time sending your CTLE credits to your school email. They are being blocked. And so some people are having difficulty getting their CTLE certificate. So please make sure on this feedback form that you provide an alternate email address. On the screen now, there are some QR codes for you to use if you would be interested in signing up for more CTLE credits. The QR code on the left of your screen will allow you to register for synchronous classes, like the one you're in today. The one on the right side of your screen will allow you to sign up for asynchronous classes. Your CTLE credit for today will be emailed to you within 24 hours of this course. And again, just on that feedback form, put an alternate email, not your school email, so that we can send that to you. In order to get more of your colleagues engaging with our presentations, we are offering a $50 Amazon gift card to participants who bring 6 staff members to any of our synchronous or asynchronous courses. When you get your email with your CTLE credit sent to you, you are going to get a unique referral code that is personal to you. And if you give this code to your colleagues and they use it when signing up for their professional development for CTLE credit, they when 6 of them do that, you will get automatically a $50 Amazon gift card sent to you. So be on the lookout for your unique referral code when you get your email with your credits. We do also want on that form your feedback. We very much appreciate your feedback. I will put that link once again in the chat for the feedback form. And I appreciate you taking the time to provide us with some feedback. If you have any CTLA related inquiries, please send them to admin@solvedconsulting.com. And they will be happy to help you with that. But again, most of the issues that people have been having with CTLE credits is that your school email is blocking us. So if on that feedback form you provide an alternate email address, I think that will solve a lot of the problems. So that brings us to the end of our time together today. I appreciate you being here with us, and I hope to see you again in the future at another class. Have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see you soon.